Welcome to Grounding Journey. I'm Cris. As a 40-something mom, business owner, yoga lover, and long-time spiritual seeker, I've been craving deeper conversations, the kind that arise from connections with other women who are on a similar journey. My purpose with Grounding Journey is to provide a space where we can have real, fulfilling, and sacred conversations. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Grounding Journey. I am joined by my guest, Stephanie Banks, and I'm excited to see where the conversation goes. So Stephanie is a professional intuitive channel who brings loving messages of insight and guidance from souls, spirit guides, ancestors, and non-physical beings. Stephanie believes we are all channels for divine wisdom, and she teaches channeling classes to those who wish to learn to more fully trust their inner voice of wisdom. Stephanie is also a mother to 3 teenagers, 3 rescue dogs, and hugs trees on a regular basis. And while I only have 1 teenager, I guess he's 20, so he's not a teenager anymore. I love that we have 3 rescue dogs because we had a whole dog conversation started and we were already laughing before we started recording. So Stephanie, I'm super excited. And, one of the things when we did our welcome call to kind of talk before the podcast, the last sentence I wrote on my piece of paper was, loved her. I want to be her friend. So I'm super excited that you're here, Stephanie, and welcome.
Thank you. And I love you and want to be your friend as well.
Thanks. I know that my audience sometimes is like, you said that last time, but I swear I don't say it every time. I just say it the real times. So Stephanie, now that I've said I think you're a rock star, why don't you introduce yourself? I've read your formal bio, but tell us who your teen sons, who your dogs know you as, who do those who love you really know you as?
Well, let's see. I'm trying to think of things in terms of my teenagers' perspectives. I think I'll skip that description. I'll just say in the world, I show up as a highly sensitive, deeply feeling, deeply loving human or soul, I would say, having a human experience. And I am so sensitive that I do feel the despair and suffering planet-wide, whether that's individual or the collective. I also feel enormous amounts of joy and well-being and excitement and enthusiasm. So I feel all things very, very profoundly and very deeply. And I have found a way to channel that high sensitivity in service to others, which is very exciting. I'm humorous. I do find lots of things hilariously funny. What my teenagers would probably say is that mom laughs when we get hurt. And there is a little, there's only a tiny bit of truth in that. I never laugh when it's emotional pain. I do not find that funny, but there's something rather comical about kind of like the slapsticky humor of someone tripping or just an unexpected thing happening to someone's physical body, not severe pain, just a little bit of something. Yes, my initial response might be to giggle a bit. I'm not taking joy in their pain, just to be clear. It's just kind of funny, whatever I just observed happening. So they don't think that's appropriate, and they're probably right, but I do that.
I love that because I've always called it my nervous giggle, my poor husband and the injuries that he has sustained and me laughing. And in our household, we say that karma acts really fast because there was one day specific that my husband snapped at Kevin, our son, and then came running up the stairs and he fell running up the stairs like that fast. And then I was laughing so hard at him for karma getting him that I went into an asthma attack. So I totally resonate for you of laughing at everybody else's stuff. He didn't break his leg. He just bumped his shin. But karma got me because I went into a full-blown asthma attack because I was laughing so hard. So I totally get you.
It's never for anything major. When there is serious pain, that's not funny. But I have referred to it as a nervous laugh as well, but most of the time I'm really not nervous. It's just an excuse for laughing when it's not necessarily appropriate.
I love it. Well, I think we're going to have lots of laughter through this episode as we've already like 4 minutes in and are in hysterics already. So one of the things that you mentioned that I wanted to visit was highly sensitive. And that's something that really resonates for me. And I want to talk about that for just a second, because I think, so often right now, everybody talks about being an empath and empath this, empath that. And I've never considered myself an empath. I'm not sure why, but I don't like, my son is completely an empath. He absorbs everybody's energy. He feels it to the heights. There's no on off switch for him. It's just very intense for him. Whereas I think I'm more of a highly sensitive because I turn it off and on based on, and not consciously turn it off and on, but situational, my stress level, my interaction, if I'm open, if I care about the people I'm around with or not. So I think that there's many people out there who don't resonate with being an empath, but wonder what's going on with them. So let's talk about highly sensitive for a minute, because I think that's a neat conversation.
Yeah. And to be clear, I do identify as being an empath. I identify as being an empowered empath. So an empath, yeah, and there's a huge difference. And I've put in the hours, and I continue to put in the hours of practice so that I can be empowered in that way. That means that I don't always absorb the energy or the information that's coming in from external, but I can choose to be present to it anytime I want. And I can choose to use it also for informational purposes or to help me determine a decision or a conversation that I might or might not want to have. So I think we're striving to be empowered empaths or empowered highly sensitive people, but I sometimes use the two terms somewhat interchangeably. To me, empaths have high sensitivities. You can be one of many different types of empaths. Believe it or not, there are plant empaths, there are animal empaths, there are physical empaths that can feel the physical pain or state of others, emotional empaths, earth empaths, weather empaths, I think is one. I might have just made the last one up, so definitely verify that. But the other ones I didn't make up. They're actually from a book. I have it here on my shelf. So, and we can be a multiple, combination of different types of empaths as well. But I just use the term highly sensitive because, like you said, a lot more people can connect with that. We have sensitivities in a variety of ways, and feel things deeply in some ways, and in other ways might not have any awareness of them. But lots and lots of us are walking the planet right now, and we're here to be in service to the planet. So our sensitivities are a gift and are not meant to take us down or take us out or deplete us. They're actually a true gift that's meant to be a resource.
That's so empowering. And it's a lot of information about empaths, because I did not know that there were so many different levels or categories of empaths. So that's really interesting. What was the name of the book that you said you have, just so that we can give that as a reference for anybody?
Yes, it is Dr. Judith Orloff's The Empath Survival Guide. And I've been referring my clients to this book since it came out years ago, because I learned so much about myself in the book. I didn't realize I was a plant empath too. I can feel, the discomfort or the parched state of my plants when they need something, water or attention, nourishment of some sort. I feel it. I feel like there's a certain level of suffering almost that I can experience, not in a huge way, but in a lighter way. And then I can attend to what they need. And that's the beauty of it. Once we have the information, we can respond to it.
I appreciate that. And in my experience, and this is where I think I'm going to learn so much about myself through our conversation today, I always think of it as the spirit of the tree or the plants. So I think last count was 83 houseplants. I have a problem. Totally admit it. I have 14 orchids. Yes, I have lots of plant issues. So what makes me think of this to talk about for a moment is we have a tree in our backyard, and I know that you have your trees in your backyard with your son, and we'll chat about those. Um, I have a tree in our backyard that is about 160 years old. And the reason we know that is because we lost a large limb off of it in June. And the limb, when we counted the rings in the limb, there were 63 rings in the limb. The arborist came out, looked at the tree because we weren't sure what was going to happen to the tree. And I was devastated for the tree because I knew that she was in pain and aching, and we were trying to figure out how to save her and what to do with her. And just so I thought there was a fairy in the tree or a gnome spirit, and that's what I was connecting with. But I'm wanting to know a little bit more about plant empaths because that's something I definitely just always thought I was talking to other spirits and guides in the plants. And it sounds kind of interesting to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, before we do that, I want to keep going on your tree story. And there's, well, first I'll answer the question. It's both. We can, and I do communicate with the energy of a plant, right? So there
Mm-hmm.
is, I believe, as our native siblings teach and know of the earth, that every living being is a spirit, has a spirit to it. So that's part of my belief system as well. And we can communicate with and receive connection, have connection with the energy of plants, of trees, etc. And we can also attune to their physical state. So that's the kind of
Mm-hmm.
empathic experience that I'm referring to. I too have a tree story just like yours. This big, beautiful tree in my backyard lost a limb years ago, a massive limb, half of her broke off, not in a
Mm-hmm.
storm, just I have no idea why. I got an arborist to come out and tell me what they thought. My opinion is that people are very quick to pull down trees.
Yes.
Yes, when that is not necessary, when actually we should be doing all that's possible to keep them.
Mm-hmm.
One, they were here before us. Two, they're doing a whole lot of good where they
Right.
are. And it's our job to protect them, I believe. So he recommended, if the tree is diseased, it needs to come down. It's gonna be a problem. And I said, absolutely not. But before I said absolutely not, I asked the tree. I channeled
Mm-hmm.
her. I communicated with her, and I said, girlfriend, listen, here's the deal. Do you feel like you have enough life force to recover from this wound? Because there wasn't anything we could do to protect, to help her heal from this big, massive loss.
Mm-hmm.
And I received from her, I got this covered. Thank you for your concern. I intend to continue to grow. Let me be. It's been 5 years. She hasn't had any problems. She grows new growth. There's been no other loss of limbs. She's a beautiful addition, to my yard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to say that we can tune in and listen to our plants, to our trees, and they'll let us know what they need, if they want to stay, if they're complete with their life cycle. I believe that. So I'm encouraging all of us to entertain that idea.
Mm, I love that. My husband and one of our dear friends did minor surgery, cleaned her up, fixed her up, and she is doing well. We just had the huge hurricane pass through. Well, you're in Florida, so you really had it. North Carolina, where we are, we got a lot of the winds, and she did fine. She didn't lose anything through it. So I was actually glad that that came down in June instead of in the hurricane last 2 weeks ago, because it definitely was safer for all of us that she came down. She lost it then. So
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, it's really I mean, the connection that I have to my plants, they're like I have 2 dogs and 2 cats, but they're also my plants are my next being. We talk about moving abroad, and I say to my husband, but I don't know what I'm going to do with all my plants. Like, I know I can take my dogs, but what am I going to do with all my plants? I can't just leave them. And I'm super grateful. Kevin is 20. He has grown up with plants in his room and the house his whole life. And he has taken in plants himself into his room and said, these are mine, and taking care of them. And he does a great job when we're gone of watering everything. Nothing dies when we're gone. So the dogs and the cats and the plants do well.
But I know that you have a backyard food forest with your teen son. So let's chat about that for a minute, because I think that's super fun.
Sure. And I will take some of your plants if you do move abroad.
I will bring them to you because I can't give them to the people I know nearby because they will kill them.
We will get a U-Haul and we will make it happen.
Yes, perfect. I'll meet you in Georgia.
While I have a lot of plants outside, I actually don't have very many indoor plants. I don't know even why that's the case, but yeah, so a few years, well, I have one of my teenagers is very, very talented with gardening and understanding plants. He can identify things that I've never even heard of before. He's the type of kid that we went on a foraging class once where we met out in the middle of a park with someone who was a trained forager showing us all the edible plants that grow naturally in our area. And my son stooped down and saw this little tiny prickly cactus growing, took a cutting of it, brought it home. It's flourishing in a pot outside.
Oh, wow.
So, and he knew the cactus, and I just watched wide-eyed, like, what? Wow, I would have stepped on that. I wouldn't have seen it. I wouldn't have noticed it. He notices everything. So we decided to have a project together where we would transform our backyard, which is just sod. Don't get me started on sod, a very bad thing for our planet. And to transform it into, since we live in Florida, so many beautiful, tropical, delicious things grow here. We grow, you know, there's mangoes, papayas, starfruit, avocado, lychees, endlessly, just whatever you could ever want to eat. So we got consultation from some women who run a community garden, and they came out and they mapped our yard. They took a look at the sun exposure. They gave us lots of ideas. They helped us with where to plant certain things. And now we're growing half the things I just mentioned to you out there. And it's magic. In between my sessions, because I'm doing a lot of energy work and it requires me to stay very clear and very high vibrational, I go outside to my garden to reset and ground and drain any energy that doesn't serve me. And every time I go out there, there's bees and butterflies and dragonflies and fruits and vegetables and amazing things that just delight my heart.
I love that. Okay, so I'll bring the houseplants to you so that I can get some fresh produce for the drive home and my flight over, and we'll make that work. What part of Florida are you in?
I'm in South Florida, Boca Raton.
Oh, okay, nice. Just to kind of give people an idea of the geographic. It sounds lovely. I'm in North Carolina and fall is finally hitting us. So my garden, I've still got peppers and eggplants going, but I don't have the array of uniqueness that you do. But I definitely love my garden and the space that it creates and the vibration that it allows us to change. And so we've spent 15 minutes talking about earth and plants, and really what we came to talk about was intuition and trust. But I think that it builds the trust in who you are as a person, and people are really going to want to hear what you have to say. And I knew we would end up talking about this because this is the part that I'm like, I want to be her friend because she's cool like me. You said you work with clients and you have to keep your vibration high. Let's talk about that, because as an empath, as a highly sensitive person, I know that I've recently been working really, I don't want to use hard, diligently on a new program that I'm launching. And I was sleeping till 9, waking up, spending 6-7 hours working. At the end of my day, I was spent. So I thought, well, maybe I'm sleeping too late and I'm not getting enough done. I'll wake up earlier. And I've discovered this week by waking up earlier that I still only have 6 hours of this energy that I can exude into my projects, which was nice to realize. It wasn't I was being lazy and sleeping late. It's just there's so much in my faucet. And when it's drained for the day, it's drained for the day. So let's talk about raising your vibration and how you do that and how you keep your vibration high.
Well, I think you just listed the most important thing, which is to listen to your own rhythms and recognize what your particular makeup is about. So some people need a lot of sleep and some people need less. And once we know what we need to function optimally, then we have a choice to make. Do we give ourselves that to ensure that we are showing up in the world in our best version of ourselves? Or do we continue to demand that which is unfair of our bodies and our minds and even our spirit to function on less, to operate from the place of depletion rather than abundance and what's readily available for a system that's being well taken care of? So for me, since we all carry frequency, we are energy. That's not new. I didn't make that up. We do have a responsibility to claim and maintain what frequency we hold. And this isn't like a perfectionistic thing, like I'm always one way. I'm not. I have moments where my vibration is quite low. And then I have to decide, do I see a client now, given this situation? Do I have that difficult conversation with a family member or loved one? Or can I reschedule all of that until I'm in a stabilized place or a higher frequency place in which to engage in that? And that's the very empowering part of becoming more in tune with your own rhythms and your own physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual needs, is you can decide how and what things you want to take on based on what type of energy that you have. In order to have a high frequency, this is what I do. And just a few things on that I'll give from the list, because the list is very extensive, and depending on the amount of time I have, I can really dive in, or I'll just grab a few quick things. But I call it radical self-care. And whatever it is that brings you joy, it goes on your list of radical self-care. And actually, for me, sleeping does bring me joy. I love sleeping, so that's on my list. If I squander that, that's really poor self-care for me. Reading is also super enjoyable. Having deep, meaningful conversations with friends, that's on my list of radical self-care. Time in nature, we've spent a lot of time talking about this thus far because it is crucial, not just for me, by the way, for all of us, but our culture has really pushed us away from the importance of nature and our interconnectedness with it. So we need to come back to that. Dark chocolate, top of my list for radical self-care. I would actually not recommend, unless you have an allergy, that you are ever without dark chocolate. That's really important. Exercise, yoga, meditation, dance, writing, all of these things bring me to a place of high frequency and joy.
I am a heck yes to all of that. And we'll say that I had a piece of dark chocolate before we got on the call, just to make sure I was ready for it. I think that's one of the things when you say radical self-care, self-care is such a buzzword that everybody says. And 2-3 years ago, everybody turned away from self-care because it meant massages, pedicures, pampering. But I think we've learned over the last couple of years that self-care is turning inside and pausing. It's giving ourselves that break, that moment, that replenishment, because we all needed that as a society. We had to turn in and replenish. And I think that's so powerful that I like adding the word radical in front of self-care, because then it becomes so much more powerful than pampering self-care.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of pampering too, but you'll notice none of that stuff, pedicures or massages, were on my list. So these are all things that I can do with no money. Well, maybe except the dark chocolate piece, right? And that's what makes them so important too, is you want to have things that are easy for you to incorporate in your day, that you really want to go to, that you receive some sort of reciprocity or rejuvenation of energy, of positive input from.
Well, and I really like that you also added reading, because for me, I try to spend at least 5 minutes a day reading. It makes a chapter go really long when I can only get 5 minutes in, but I at least know that I'm still dedicating that to myself, because that's something that I really love. And it only takes a couple of minutes. And it's sometimes the 5 minutes of reading, 20 minutes of yoga doesn't happen, but if 5 minutes of reading happens, then I feel like I've taken that pause and I've honored my spirit and my soul and nurtured what needed to be nurtured.
Yes. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's powerful. And Same with, you mentioned your animals. So same with time with our animals. That is
Mhm.
very, that is at the top of my list of radical self-care too. They make me laugh. They're so silly. They're so yummy. They're warm. They're sweet. They're funny. They're such a gorgeous, um, thing that animals do for us to settle our nervous systems,
Mhm.
to bring unconditional love, to be our teachers, to allow for us to serve them in the ways that they require care. It's everybody go adopt something.
I love that because my husband is a bored eater. And my office is off right
Mm,
next, like my office door is the pantry door right beside it. And
mhm,
so he comes into the pantry in the middle of the day. I'm like, you just ate lunch. Go throw the ball with the dog. And he'll go outside with Rex for a couple minutes and then come in and forget he was hungry. And so that's one of those that I keep telling him, just go love on the dog for a minute. Because it also, when he goes to play ball, it gets him in the sunshine. It gets him
mhm.
outside with his feet in the ground. It gets him away from his computer. Like there's so many things that it incorporates when you take a few minutes and go outside with your dog.
Yeah, it's a different kind of nourishment and just the kind you
Mhm.
need. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and I love that this conversation is kind of flowing because when we started, before we started record, I said, I have two topics. Which one do you want to go with? And you said, they both go together. And there's been this natural flow, I think. And if somebody else isn't following the flow, I'm sorry, it's making sense in my head. We were talking about radical self-care, nurturing your soul, taking care of your spirit. And I think that leads into trust because when we give ourselves that pause, when we give ourselves that break, we begin to trust ourselves. Our soul begins to speak more because our mind is giving it credibility. And that's one of the biggest levels of trust that I think is so important is that trust for yourself, that trust in your mind, body, spirit connection.
Mhm. Absolutely. That's totally true. In order to trust ourselves, we have to be able to hear ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, what we are hearing is not us, but it's the mainstream or whatever messaging that we
Yes.
have that's part of the conditioning as a factor of wherever we're our communities or our families or where we live in the world, sometimes our religions, etc. So we have a job to do, every one of us, and that is to get clearer on what is our truth, just that one, those things that resonate within you. And it can be threatening to question what you have been told or what you've been willing to believe for so much of your lifetime. But it's also very liberating when you can
Mm-hmm.
determine for yourself which parts or pieces you want to keep from, say, your upbringing or your religion or something you were told by culture or
Yes.
society, and then let the rest go and not adhere to it any longer or not promote it or just let it fall away. Then you can know what's true for you. When you know what's true for you, your soul's like, now we're rocking and rolling. Now I've got this direct connection to communicate. And you learn to listen to and for that frequency of your soul, of your spirit, of divine, whatever you call the, love energy, and let it be your guide. And that's kind of that's the basis of everything that I do professionally right now.
Okay. Sorry for that pause for a moment. I was still writing a sentence down that you said. Uh, and I love that you say, now know what's true for you. Your soul says, now we're rocking and rolling, because
Mhm,
that was what I was writing down. That is such a powerful statement because our soul sits so quietly
mhm,
because it's so overrun by the ego mind that it's just
mhm,
kind of that younger sibling who has the older brother who is really
mhm,
loud and boisterous. So the younger sibling just kind of sits and waits until the big brother is quiet. And when that big brother moves out and moves on, then that's younger sibling gets to flourish and bloom and blossom. And that's where your soul says, oh, you see me. Cool.
mhm,
This is what I have to say. And it can be a really long, winding road, and it can be a really beautiful spring.
mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like I feel like the soul is a student aspect of ourselves. So
Mm.
it's here to call forward certain experiences that allow for maximum growth. The soul's here to grow. And by that, I mean, get closer to understanding unconditional love and being able to practice that. And that brings us back to radical self-care, because that's where we practice. If we can love ourselves, if we can have self-compassion and self-forgiveness, that is a prerequisite to being able to do so for others and extend
Mhm.
that to others. So this is also why our relationships, I feel that our relationships are where we do our biggest growth. It tends to be where our
Mhm.
greatest challenges lie and where the most expansion is possible. So the soul is here always with us and always to communicate. And our duty really is to align with the frequency of spirit, of soulful communication, which, as you said, is a lot more subtle than the outside, or than the voice of ego, voice of fear, voice of scarcity, mainstream media, whatever you want to call it.
Well, and I think one of the things that you said triggering was when we align with it. When we
Mhm.
align with it, it flows into being able to connect with our intuition and hearing
Mhm.
our intuition, because the soul doesn't feel like, I don't know about you, but my soul's pretty quiet and soft and gentle. She's very just gentle and beautiful and like a flower. That's where I kind of come with that. So it's hard for her to be loud and boisterous. So when um, the loud and boisterous is calmed, that's where I can connect with my intuition, because when there's everything loud and boisterous, there's just too much chaos for my intuition to talk.
That's absolutely right. You cannot hear your voice of intuition when there's the cacophony of the loud noise of the outer world. You can't. That's why people meditate. That's why meditation is effective, because the goal isn't to sit in emptiness. I mean, if you can get there, awesome. I totally applaud you. Many of us don't get to that place, but we get a little bit of space between our thoughts, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where we can hear that subtlety and the communication of soul, of spirit, of whatever it is you're tuning to.
And that's a powerful place. And that also takes some discernment of learning, because while my soul won't be boisterous, my ego mind can be soft and deceptive. So
Mm.
in those moments of meditation, learning the discernment of what is the soft ego and what is the spirit truth speaking. And that's where I think that's taken a lot of practice for me in meditation. And I love my meditation practice. It's been a struggle lately, but I've been very distracted in my daily
Mm.
life. So my meditation practice is affected by that. But that has been one of my, I don't want to use the word accomplishments or achievements. I don't know, but that's been one of my milestones, to know
Mhm.
that my meditation practice has gotten deeper, is that I found that level of discernment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's powerful. And that it needs to be a practice. And again, we don't have to do this with perfection. There's an ebb and
Hmm.
flow to our lives, right? And so sometimes even I do not meditate when things get hectic, chaotic, busy, etc. I have other ways to work in meditative states, but in terms of sitting in active meditation, sometimes that slides for me too. And I could get on
Mhm.
my own case about it and make it a bigger deal than it is, or I could say, oh, okay, tomorrow's a new day.
Right. That's where having grace for ourselves comes in, and
Mhm.
really honoring our soul. I have a tattoo on my right foot that says walking with faith and grace. And it's on my right foot because that way I'm always taking the right step forward when I honor the grace and the faith that I have for myself. And I think it was also my first tattoo. It took me like 3 years to come up with it. But it's a
I love
powerful,
that.
thanks. um,
I want to ask you to show it to me in the video, but you might not feel comfortable doing that.
I totally will, but it's going to be involving getting my head above my shoulders in the chair. So how about I send you a picture later?
It'll involve some yoga work.
Yeah. I'll definitely send you a picture via email, and I'll post a picture in the blog post. Um,
Okay, fair enough.
but I think that's so powerful, is the grace that we give ourselves. And sometimes the grace is that we're not always great about grace for ourselves. Like that's grace within itself. That's the true test of grace, is when we give ourselves grace for not having grace.
Absolutely.
It's a powerful process.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that we have had this flowing conversation, and really what we were going to talk about was your ability to channel, because I think that's so fascinating. And I've had some of my own dabblings, but I don't always focus on developing that. So I think we'll have to have a whole nother conversation about channeling, because I think that's a powerful conversation in itself of an experience. But I love that we've been able to talk about vibrations and grace and the soul and so much more, because I think those are things that everybody listening is going, yeah, okay, that's powerful. That means something. And I'm so grateful to have this conversation and this time with you to talk about this stuff.
Me too. I could talk about this all day long.
Absolutely. And see, this is why I said, like, I want to have more conversations with you and chat. So we are going to do a bonus episode, and we are going to talk about one of the books, The Hidden Life of Trees, which I've never read. So I'm always excited about hearing about a new book. And I know when we discussed, were we going to talk about the planet and Earth, or were we going to talk about channeling and intuition? You said the book will cover either. So I'm excited that that's going to be our conversation. So I know that everybody else is going to want to be friends with you too. So where can they find you? Where are you hanging out?
You can go to my website. It's soulinsight.com, and you can see my courses. I have an upcoming class, a learn to channel class, actually, beginning level, coming up starting next week. And anything else that is of interest can be found on the website, soulinsight.com.
And are you hanging out on social media anywhere?
Yes, I do have Instagram, and Facebook. Stephanie Intuitive Channel is the name for that.
Good deal. Well, thank you, Stephanie, so much for the conversation. I look forward to having you again as another guest. And I thank you. And we'll definitely invite everybody to check out the bonus episode that we'll release the week after this one, and check out Stephanie's website.
Thanks, Cris.
Thanks for listening to Grounding Journey today. To learn more about me and Grounding Journey, I invite you to visit my website at groundingjourney.com. There you'll find a free download that supports you in creating and clearing your sacred space, introduces you to the chakra system, not to mention you'll receive a 10-part email series guiding you through a deeper exploration of your chakras.